that's really strange that they don't teach money at school. What they teach us to do, get a job, be an employee. I don't want to do that. The rich don't pay taxes legally because the government wants us to do certain things. They're incentives. They tax the stupid, the uneducated, the misinformed. So I'm using debt to get richer. Most people use debt to get poor.
Entrepreneurs rise from anywhere. Poverty doesn't need to be explained.
Right.
Really what needs to be explained is our wealth, our prosperity. Where did that come from? And how do we get more of that? How do we generate more of that for everybody globally? What companies do you admire? Great, let's buy those companies in our portfolios. Let's not worry about what the market's gonna do tomorrow. Let's not worry about people telling you it's gonna crash next year, those kinds of things. Think about being an investor for the rest of your life, 40 plus years, and let's start doing it the real way, the way that works.
I am literally vibrating with excitement. Our purpose in this project is something that is extraordinary in its scope because financial illiteracy is so rampant within our culture. Money is such an important topic, but yet people want to try to avoid this topic, and through grade school, high school, college, even grad school, the idea of getting financially literate never occurs to people in a meaningful way. So this project is something near and dear to my heart because I know it's going to change a lot of people's lives and I want it to change your life. We really spanned the globe for this project, and many of the names of the experts that we interviewed will be known to you. Some of them will not, but once you see their interviews, you're going to know them very, very well. With all of these interviews and interactions, there are three areas that we focused on. Number one, how to create wealth. Number two, how to protect it. And number three, how to grow it. What was fascinating to me are the different perspectives on this. So I know that different things are going to have different levels of impact on you. I encourage you to watch the entire series. Don't just cherry pick certain interviews, but watch everything because you need a 360-degree view of this topic called money and understanding those three key areas again, which are how to create wealth, how to preserve your wealth or protect it, and then how to grow your wealth. So with all that being said, let me enthusiastically invite you to watch episode 1 of Money Revealed. When I found out that we had an interview set up with Robert Kiyosaki, I was over the moon excited and had a huge amount of anticipation. But here's what I didn't anticipate, that the actual interview would blow away any expectations that I had. This is an interview that I am going to be watching over and over again for years to come. And I'm extraordinarily privileged and excited to share it with you right now. Robert, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, so thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited too.
I feel like we could talk for days about so many things, as far as the wisdom that you've generated over the years relative to money and investment and what's wrong with the system and how to change your perspective of it. But how did you even get started here in the first place? What got you interested in this line of work that you do?
What line of work am I in?
Well, you're in a couple of lines of work, as I see I think you're a money philosopher.
I'm an entrepreneur.
You're an entrepreneur.
I have multiple businesses.
And so what got you started on the road to being an entrepreneur?
I just didn't want a job. I mean, I just didn't want a job. Every time my school teacher says, if you don't get good grades, you won't get a job. I said, good, I'm on the right track because I never had good grades. And that drives a lot of people crazy because education is very important. Mm-hmm. But for me, going to school was a waste of time because I had a rich dad and I had a poor dad. And my poor dad was the head of education. Mm-hmm. And he was poor because he was in education. And so I knew, my dad was a PhD, from Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern, head of education for the state of Hawaii. And having him as a father, I realized that if he went to school, he'd probably never be rich. So at the age of 9, I raised my hand I was in the 4th grade growing up in Hawaii, Hilo, Hawaii, a little sugar plantation town. And I asked my 4th grade teacher, I said, when will I learn about money? And she looked at me, she was like a church lady, like Dana Carvey, and she goes, we don't teach money at school. So I asked her, so why am I in school then? And I kept bugging her, and finally, and she was like 10 years over retirement, I think. And she got nastier and meaner at me because I was 9 years old. My classmates were all rich, and I was poor. And I'm going, I just want to be rich. I don't want to go to school. And she said to me, the love of money is the root of all evil. I looked at her, I said, well, how come my classmates are rich? They're not evil, you know what I mean? And the hypocrisy got to me, how kids are at 9.
Sure.
And so I went home to my poor dad, the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. And I said, how come they don't teach us about money at school? And he says, because the government doesn't allow us to do that. And so at 9, I went, that's strange. Do you know what I mean? I just wanted, kids will ask questions until they get their answer.
Sure.
And my dad, for Japanese, was tall, 6'4", 250 pounds, big man. And I said, Dad, that's really strange that they don't teach money at school. He says, what do they teach us to do? He says, get a job, be an employee. But I said, isn't that to work for money? He goes, well, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want a job, and I don't want to spend my life working for money. It's a slave to money. So finally he said, well, why don't you ask your classmate, your best friend in school in the 4th grade, because his father's going to be a rich man someday. So how do you know that? He says, because Mike, my rich dad's son, is an entrepreneur. And I went, what's an entrepreneur? He says, somebody doesn't need a job. I said, I want that job. I don't want a job, and entrepreneurs create jobs. So that's how I kind of got started, just by asking what my 4th grade teacher thought were stupid questions. And that changed the direction of my life. So at the age of 9, I began studying with my rich dad, a man who never went to school. His father died when he was 13, so he took over the family business. And in retrospect, what made him smart, his teachers were his accountants, his attorneys, his bankers, his real estate agents, because he was 13 years old. And he had real teachers. What I mean by a real teacher is somebody who's actually doing the real thing in real life. And as you know, most school teachers don't do the real thing that they teach.
Right.
And by the time I got to the college, I went to an academy. And I was flunking out of school for calculus, 3 years of calculus, and I couldn't do a damn thing. And I asked my calculus teacher, I said, when are we going to learn about, why am I studying calculus? He goes, I don't know. And I asked him, I said, do you ever use calculus? He goes, no. I said, why do you teach it? He goes, because I get paid to. And I'm a child of the 60s. If I flunked out of calculus, it was nonstop to Vietnam. Do you know what I mean? So I had an incentive to pass calculus, which I flunked anyway. But anyway, that's where I kind of got disillusioned with school, education. Education's important. But my poor dad was a poor man, although a PhD, because they don't learn anything about money, and they don't teach anything about money in school. And so we wonder why today we have a rise in socialism and communism and fascism and the anger against the rich. These young senators and congressmen, they want to tax the rich and charge them 70% taxes and all this. And I'm going, why are they doing this? Well, it's because our schools don't teach us about money. And that's why I'm in this business.
And it hasn't changed since you were in school. Today it still seems to be the same.
No, it was not going to change. It's really, it's tragic. So when I ask people, I said, what does school teach you about money? Get this zzz. And I said, does your teacher know anything about money? They go, zzz. Do our political leaders know anything about money? Zzz. There's this like money is the root of all evil in many people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we all use money. That's the irony of it.
Is there a relationship between the banking systems? I'd like you to comment on the banking system and the educational system.
Well, the banks run the world. It's called the central banks of America. You know, the Fed, the ECB, the European Central Bank, the PBOC, People's Bank of China, the Bank of Japan. We're really, capitalism is run by a central banking system. That's called communism also. The government is, you know, communism is centralized government, capitalism is centralized banking. And the more you step back, you look at the big picture, the ultra-rich control the central banks. For example, the Rothschild Corporation, let's say there's 50 central banks, the Rothschilds own about 48 of them.
Wow.
And so you and I don't have a prayer because money makes the world go round. And the economy runs on money, like it or not. So that's why I became a student of money back in the 80s. And I began looking at, I was a student of R. Buckminster Fuller, a guy who created the geodesic domes and all that. And he wrote a book called Grunch of Giants. Grunch stands for Gross Universal Cash Heist. It's how the ultra-rich steal our wealth. And so when I read Grunch of Giants in '83, I understood what my rich dad was telling me. And that's when my rich dad, he read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it says the rich don't work for money because our money is toxic, our money is corrupt. Our financial system, or money, is designed to make the rich richer, but keep the poor middle class poorer. And that's why our schools don't teach us about money, because the school system works for the central banks also.
So basically the schools are designed to create
Employees.
employees, an employee mindset,
Correct.
which is, I guess, in a part survival mindset. You know, you get a job just to provide for your
To work for
family.
money.
Yeah. And
But you learn nothing about money.
right.
Ironic, isn't it?
It's well, look what would happen if you enlightened them about money in school. They wouldn't get out and go work for the bankers.
Nah, I don't know. You know, I don't know what would happen. But I think the house of cards is about to come down anyway, because the corruption inside our banking system is at all-time highs. This has happened before in history. It's been going on for thousands of years, where the banking system, I'm not blaming bankers. I like my banker a lot because he gives me money. But anyway, the whole system was rigged by the banks. The golden rule. He who controls the gold makes the rules. And so I decided I'd rather be on the banker side than the employee side. It's just a choice.
Yeah. So when you came to that realization, then real estate seems to be your central focus for your investment.
Not really.
Okay.
Okay. People think I'm a real estate guy. I am an entrepreneur. I have many, many different companies. You know, I create jobs. I don't have a job. I don't have an office. I'm not allowed in my own company. See, an entrepreneur is just a free person. That's all it is. You don't ever need money again.
And yet you're, as you said, providing jobs, and you get into these industries. So maybe we could talk about the varying activities, but can we start with real estate and talk about your views of real estate investment?
Well, it's really a business model. You know, everybody talks about the business. You know, I came and asked you about your business model, because every entrepreneur has a different business model. So the model I followed was McDonald's. You know, Ray Kroc. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in there, my friend interviewed Ray Kroc. You know, he was in the MBA program at University of Texas, and Ray Kroc asked the class, the MBA class, he said, "What business is McDonald's in?" And everybody says, "You're in hamburgers." And Ray laughed. He says, "No, McDonald's is in the real estate business." And so and there was a movie called Founder.
Yes.
With, I think, Keaton
Michael
started
Keaton.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in there, he spells it out. The only reason you create a business is to buy real estate. Now, people think, "Oh, you're a real estate guy." No, that's not true either. So my business, so I have Rich Dad, let's say, and I buy probably $500 million worth of real estate out of one company. And the reason I can do that is because real estate is really about debt and taxes, which they never teach you in school. So you understand, the more profits I make, let's say I make $1 million in Rich Dad, I can lever up, I can borrow $5 million to buy a piece of real estate. So I'm using debt to get richer. Most people use debt to get poor, but that takes financial education or literacy, whatever you want to call it. So I buy real estate, and because I have $5 million in real estate, I pay no taxes. So the real game is called debt and taxes. That's why if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the rich don't work for money. I don't have REITs, I don't have ETFs, I don't have mutual funds, I don't have stocks, because I'm an entrepreneur.
So how is it that debt, real estate debt, because a lot of people, you hear them just prattling about debt is bad, never have debt, you don't want to get into debt, et cetera. You're advocating it and for tax savings, I guess in part for tax savings. So how does that work?
I didn't say tax savings, I said don't pay taxes.
Oh, well, okay, so to eliminate taxes.
Big difference.
Yeah, okay. So
that drives people crazy.
Yeah.
How can you not pay taxes? Well, you have to understand tax law. Okay.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, tax laws are not about not paying taxes. Tax law is incentives. So the government wants you to do certain things. For example, if you donate to a church, they'll give you a tax break. You donate your car to the Kidney Foundation, they give you a tax break, right? So if I buy real estate, give me a tax break. Lovely stuff, because I'm providing housing. If I invest in oil wells, I get a tax break because the government wants energy. If I invest in food production, I get a tax break. And when I borrow $5 million to buy a piece of property, I get a tax break because the government needs me to be in debt. You see, if there's no debt, the economy collapses. The reason, when they dropped the interest rates after that whole central bank, the Fed screw up, they had to drop the interest rate so guys like me would borrow. If they didn't want me to borrow, they'd raise interest rates. So they want me to borrow. When I borrow money, I create money. See, money is only created as debt, bonds. As people don't understand, they don't teach this in school.
No.
So the more I borrow, the happier the government gets because I'm actually putting money into the economy. So I borrow, let's say, $5 million. I buy a $5 million piece of property. Then the tax law allows me to appreciate it, depreciate it, and amortize it. Zero taxes. I collect all the income from that property tax-free. That's the game.
Is there ever a day like in the future that comes home to roost, or is it something that you can perpetuate year over year over year?
Yeah. But you've got to be smart. They'll never teach you this in school. I don't know her name, Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris and AOC, they're all saying, let's tax the rich. So if you're over $10 million income, they're going to tax you 70%. Let me wake people up here. You're making $10 million a year. You're not paying any taxes because you can hire the best tax accountants and tax attorneys that the money can buy. So they never tax the rich. They tax the stupid, the uneducated, the misinformed. And it's tragic, and that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The rich don't pay taxes legally because the government wants us to do certain things. They're incentives. So when I buy an apartment house, I'm providing housing. I get full tax breaks. When I drill for oil, I don't buy Standard Oil or Chevron or Exxon. If I drill for oil, the day I drill for oil, I get a 70% tax break. The day I drill, day one. Now, does Exxon tell you that? No.
Wow. So yeah, and it shows that these so-called political leaders don't understand the tax system themselves.
No.
They just think that
Trump does.
Well, and I was wondering about this with Trump because obviously, he didn't want to release his tax returns.
Why should he?
I agree, but they would probably show similar, saying he doesn't really pay any taxes because he's doing what he does in real estate and probably understands what you understand.
It's always in the paper, but the people don't understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
There was this article in the New York Times who was after Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner is another rich Jewish real estate tycoon family in New York City who married Ivanka Trump, all that stuff. It's just families marrying families.
Sounds like royalty way back when.
Yeah.
Aristocracy.
And so the New York Times, this a few months ago, was attacking Jared Kushner because he paid no taxes. And they were painting him out to be a criminal. And all Jared says, I just follow the tax code. Let me say this again. The tax code is not about paying taxes. The tax code is a series of incentives. Say, if you donate to your church, we'll give you a tax break. You grow food, we'll give you a tax break. You produce water, we'll give you a tax break. You provide oil, we'll give you a tax break. You provide real estate, we'll give you a tax break. So if you're paying taxes, you're not helping the government.
Right.
It's a different point of view, that's all I'm saying.
I've always felt and maintained that taxes were more about controlling behavior than they were about collecting revenue, right?
It is.
It's like saying, hey, if you don't do these things, you get punished.
Yes.
If you do them, you get rewarded.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really that simple, isn't it?
Tax code, my accountant, Tom Wheelwright, the smartest guy I know, he wrote a book called Tax-Free Wealth. It's a Rich Dad Advisor book. If you're sick and tired of paying taxes, get the book. It's called Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, CPA. He's the guy that guides me.
Well, so, and this is where I've always personally felt the pain. I've been an entrepreneur for decades now, generated a lot of income. And what I came to realize after a couple of decades of working nights, working weekends, launching businesses, doing startups, taking risks, doing all the things that entrepreneurs do, is that if you do that and you make regular income doing it, by the time you pay taxes, live any kind of a reasonable lifestyle, put your kids through school, you can't accumulate any real wealth.
No,
it's
you're
impossible. Taxes just deplete the ability to have wealth accumulation.
And I'll give you even worse advice.
Yeah.
Worse, I hate to break the bad news to you. You know, so many young people, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or I'm going to quit my job and become an entrepreneur. The moment you quit your job, become an entrepreneur, you pay higher taxes.
Yeah.
You see, an entrepreneur will pay an employee will pay approximately 40%. This is all over the world. Employees pay approximately 40% of their income in taxes. Small entrepreneurs pay 65%. You can't get ahead that way.
No.
So Rich Dad as a company, we educate people about the big business side, the McDonald's side. You know, as Ray Kroc said, my business is real estate. So when I come in here, I'm looking at all your equipment and all this stuff. So this is depreciated at, pretty good rates.
Right.
But if you want long-term, not pay taxes, it's real estate.
Well, so you're starting my story. So I'm going to ask you, be my rich dad for a minute. And so if I'm a guy, and I am, that makes pretty high above average income,
You pay high above taxes
I
too.
pay a lot of taxes, and
they'll never tell you that in school.
No, not at all. It's always, when you're making that kind of money, you can afford to pay more taxes. And I'm like, but why do I get punished for the more I produce, the more I'm punished? Which means that I can't produce as many jobs, I can't expand my business, I can't, all those things. And if you take the people who value create and punish them, and take the people who don't create and reward them, it doesn't take long to see where that might end. So I've logically worked all that out, but I've said, but what is the pivot point? How do I now go from this and say, I have some income, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of people who are watching this. I have some income. I maybe even have some accumulated capital. But how do I now, what are my steps to saying I want to move toward that rich dad mentality and find a way to eliminate my tax burden and actually accumulate some wealth?
Well, that's why I said education is really important, but not the stuff they teach you in school. If you do what they tell you in school, like doctors and lawyers, they pay the highest tax rates around.
Exactly.
That's not that intelligent, and they're the A students.
Yeah.
The C and D students like me, we don't pay taxes, but we hire good accountants, good attorneys, and we do what the tax code wants us to do. So, when the markets crashed in 2007, I thought I died and went to heaven because, they were giving real estate away and the interest rates dropped. Holy mackerel. I thought, thank you, Jesus, you've given me, so I borrowed $300 million and I bought all this real estate they're giving away, and I depreciated it, I appreciated it and amortized it. So I made millions and paid no taxes on debt. I borrowed money. But that's what I'm trained to do. I'm not trained as a lawyer, I'm not trained as an accountant, I'm not trained as a doctor, thank God. But I did have a rich dad. He's a man who never went to school, but he was trained by his accountants, his attorneys, his bankers, and all that, real teachers, not these fake teachers in college.
In part, if you're not looking to become a professional that requires a certain educational process, do you think that college education or quote unquote investing in tuition is probably not a good
It
investment?
depends on what you want to become. You want to be a doctor.
Me too. Yeah.
I should hope you go to med school. You want to be a real estate broker. You got to go to school. You got to get that license. So the moment you have a license, you're into the tax bracket. There's a book I wrote called The Cash Flow Quadrant. E, S, B, and the I. E's and S's go to school. B's and I's don't. So the richest guys on earth didn't finish school. Like B's are like Zuckerberg, Jobs, Gates, Branson. And the investors, like Warren Buffett and Soros and all that, they don't pay taxes.
And isn't it, somebody brought this up in the series, because you have people like Buffett who will say, oh, I should be taxed higher. And, he's making these public proclamations when he's already got all this accumulated wealth that he hasn't paid tax on.
No, what he says is he pays more, his secretary
Pays more tax than him, and I should be taxed higher.
And if you believe that guy, I got Santa Claus for you. He is, he's a very smart man.
Of course.
But he comes across as this jolly old Saint Nick, but he's smart as a whip.
So
he doesn't send his kids to school either.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yep.
I guess he's got the education they
Correct.
need, right?
I'm just trying to say something, our school system is part of the system. And that pumps out Harris, Kamala Harris and Alexa Ocasio-Cortez, and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and they're hardcore communists.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being a communist, but I'm a hardcore capitalist. So we have enough room on this planet for both of us. But when you don't give a child or student the choice, and all our Rich Dad Company did was give people a choice. Say, you want to be an employee or a specialist, like a doctor or a lawyer, go to school. You want to be rich, like what do you call Zuckerberg or a Jobs, and be like a Buffett or a Soros, Rich Dad. We're the 5%, and that's all we cater to. And we're not very popular with the school teachers.
You've got that right for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's my poor dad. They're good people. Don't get me wrong, I'm just saying these are your choices here. And freedom is about choice. But we're not given those choices in school.
Well, what's interesting, because I think to me in the end, because you talk about, like you said, your dad, skilled academic, right? And
Brilliant.
And probably a beautiful soul and caring and et cetera,
Yes.
has a purpose in life and wants to leave the world a better place. So the intentions are all proper, but there's also, I think, in that academic sector, this sort of disdain for the quote-unquote profiteers, the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneur was almost a bad word when I went to school.
It's still a bad word.
Yeah. So it starts to, I think, translate, at least for me, that this starts to become sort of this spiritual issue, right? That I believe that for the people who were indoctrinated in the system, get out and they're working and they're taxed and they're all these things go on, that I think it has some sort of adverse impact on the human spirit. It's not just a monetary issue.
Correct. There's 4 different types of intelligences. Number 1 is mental, and that's the academic type. 2 is physical, those are the athletes. 3 is the emotional, and 4 is spiritual. And they're all different intelligences. So the combination of those 4 makes up the human being. So for me, what gives me the advantage is emotional intelligence. See, most people come out of school so terrified of making mistakes. They go, oh, what if I fail? I said, well, if you're not failing, you're not learning it. Oh, what do I want to fail? In school, you make mistakes, you're stupid. In school, I was very cooperative at test time, but that's called cheating. You know what I mean? Everything is opposite. It's like we're like a parallel universe. E's and S's on one side, B's and I's on the other. Right. And all the Rich Dad Company does, hey, look, you want to be E's and S's, go to school. You want to be on the right side, the B and I side, the big business, 500 employees or more. I have thousands of employees. I provide a lot of jobs, so I pay no taxes. I should get that.
Right.
I don't like it when I see people struggling financially. I don't like this gap between the rich and everybody else. I went past the 1% long time ago. I'll give you an example. In the 60s, I'm a child, I'm a Vietnam era guy. I fought in Vietnam, I'm a Marine, I'm a pilot, and all this stuff. But I fought for capitalism. I really did. I sincerely believe that in the American dream, but we don't have financial education. But when I was in Vietnam, there wasn't much of a gap between rich, poor, and middle class. The rich had nicer houses and newer cars. That's about it. Poor guys had junk cars and junk houses. That's about it, though. And then it got to be that as capitalism took off and provided things, so today the poor and middle class, they can afford to travel throughout the world, but they fly on Southwest or discount airlines. So capitalism provided discount travel for the poor and middle class, but the rich fly private jets. Today, the rich have their own rockets and their own satellites. So, do you know what I mean? Guys
Yes.
like Musk provides it. Branson has
Branson.
his own satellites and all this. So I'm going to have my own rocket ship. I just don't have it yet. And that's the beauty of capitalism. For me to have my own rocket ship and launch my own satellite, I better be doing something. Now, it's a stupid goal. I don't recommend it. But that's what capitalism is. Whereas socialism, let's take from the rich and give to the poor.
Right.
It's called Robin Hood theory. I don't support that because when I was in Sunday school, I was taught to teach people to fish, not take from the rich and give them fish.
Right.
And so that's where we separate. It's sad to say.
What do you think, if you look into the future, this wealth gap that you're seeing that's starting to widen, where's this going to lead us?
I think we're going to economic collapse, personally, because for thousands of years we've done what we've done for thousands of years what we're doing today. We spend too much money, we print money, we debase our currency. During the Roman empires, they took gold and silver and they mixed it with lead and nickel and stuff like this. We're doing the same thing. And so the trouble with what's happening to our money is in 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, the dollar became dead. People don't know that. Dollar is dead. And they could print as much as they wanted. So the value of the dollar goes down. It's a very rich dad, poor dad. I said savers are losers. Because why would you save it when the Fed can print it? It doesn't compute in my capitalistic mind. The trouble is, historically, for thousands of years, anybody who's done this collapses. So the Roman Empire collapsed, the Chinese government collapsed, and we're doing the same thing. We just don't live long enough to know it. So we're pretty close right now. We just can't keep printing money and giving people money for free and think that it'll survive. And the trouble is, it's now a global problem. We have the central banks of like European, Japanese, Chinese, everybody's central banks today, and we're printing money. It's not going to last.
This is a somewhat poignant statement. Savers are losers. Because they're saving dollars or whatever their currency is, and
That's all they know.
Yeah, and it's all they know. And incidentally, it's promulgated, right? You need to save, have zero debt, and you need to save, and that's the way you get to your future.
And I have 100% debt and no savings. It's opposite. It's a parallel universe.
Wow, but clearly, based on what is happening, how money is debased, it's clearly you're a lemming walking off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then you end up pretty broke, and you've got more life in front of you. And then what's going to happen is the communists are all going to scream more that we have to take from the rich and give to the poor.
Correct.
Scary scenario.
And the rich are screwing everybody. It's not the rich, it's our education system screwing everybody. That's the problem. See, I'm a child of the 60s. I remember this quarter came up and had a copper tinge around it.
I remember this.
1964.
Yeah.
That was debasing the money. And that's when savers became losers. So I was at a antique show, and they were actually selling quarters for $5 because the silver value was worth $5 now.
Wow.
And so if you're a saver, you go, well, why is that quarter of $5 now? Because your savings have gone down in value. No, they wouldn't do that to me. I said, yeah, they do every day. They print it.
Wow.
They print money to pay their bills. You know, if you and I did that, we'd be in handcuffs.
True.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really a great analogy. Saying, okay, here's a silver quarter.
$5.
I get $5 for that. Here's one of those ones with the copper rim.
Yeah.
It's 25 cents.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between saying we have a monetary system that's based on something that's attached to like silver or gold, as compared to saying we just can do what we want to the currency. It's got no reference point, and that makes it worth less and less every single day.
Yeah, and you know, everybody watches the stock market. Being a professional investor, the problem's in the bond market, and the bond market is bigger than the stock market. So we're in serious trouble financially, and so that's why when I talk to people, I say buy a silver dollar. It costs you $20. Oh, I can't afford $20. I said, then you got trouble.
Yeah.
Buy a dime for $2. Oh, I can't afford $2. It's the mindset screwed up. But they can go to McDonald's and buy a Big Mac.
Yeah. And then hope that the consequences of the Big Mac on their health is going to be paid for by the government.
And then they'll buy real estate with that Big Mac. And pay no taxes and use debt to buy it.
You know, it's
that's why the rich really get richer.
And in a sense, you know, you say personally you pay no taxes, but you have...
I do it because I do what the government wants me to do.
Exactly. And at the same time, though, you're causing, you know, through the jobs you create, many, you know, workers to pay a bunch of tax. So
Amen.
There you have it, right?
They love me. Government
They have to love you because the people who are indoctrinated into the system, who go to work for somebody else to pay their taxes every single
Go to school,
paycheck.
get a job, and pay your taxes, save money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market.
And if there's not somebody like you to orchestrate what needs to happen for those workforces to have a job, then there's no taxes that happen. So you're right. You're heroic to the tax collectors because you create the jobs of the people that can be
Pay
taxed.
taxes.
Yeah.
Yes. You got it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got it. And
It's the system.
So, what would happen if you did a thought experiment? What would happen if tomorrow morning the workers woke up to all this, kind of saw it for what it was? Suddenly, let's say that they can do a matrix download, and you know, and they suddenly say, "Oh, I just got the rich dad education, you know, that I never got." Does that transform things in a positive way? What happens?
Well, it'll never happen. You know, like I said, there's 4 types of intelligence. There's
Yes.
mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. And most people, when it comes to money, they're emotional as hell. They can't help but spend money.
Yeah.
They go to work to spend money. And the difference between, you know, there's small entrepreneurs and big entrepreneurs.
Right.
My job as an entrepreneur is to create assets. That's all. So when I started the Rich Dad Company, it's an asset. I never worked there. I get a lot of money all the time from that. I buy real estate. I get money all the time. Then I buy oil wells. I have money all the time. And assets put money in your pocket. The reason the poor and middle class struggle is they buy liabilities they think are assets. Let me give you an example. You ask the average person, a house is an asset. Your house is a liability.
Because it's not producing any income.
Correct. It's taking money.
Wow.
And not only that, you know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, so what's the secret to it? It's a book on accounting. That's all it is. A simple book on accounting. And they never teach you accounting in school.
Elaborate on that. So when you say it's a book on accounting,
Income, expense, asset, liability, statement of cash flow.
it's a,
Very simple stuff.
yeah.
You can teach it to a kid. But our schools will not teach it. I tried. I took it to Harvard and I got kicked out. The European system of education produces 2 types of people, employees and soldiers, people who will do as they're told.
Yeah.
They cannot think.
Chilling.
And they're afraid of making mistakes. And how do you learn if you don't make mistakes? How does a child learn to walk unless they fall down?
Yeah.
But in school, you get punished for making mistakes. Stupid, 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 you made a mistake. And you sit there, you memorize this answer. A teacher who knows nothing about money tells you to memorize. In 1492, Columbus sailed the
Ocean blue.
You're brainwashed.
Yeah.
And I got I almost had 100 on my test one time. teacher asked, what was Columbus's flagship? And I asked the question, which voyage? I got hammered for that one.
Wow.
Well, because there was 3 voyages.
Yeah.
And the Santa Maria went aground on Hispaniola on the first voyage. You know, but the teacher didn't know that, so she just give me a 99 instead of 100. I'm not that stupid, you know, but I like history, that's why.
Yeah.
But I asked the question, which voyage? And then I challenged her. I said, well, Columbus never discovered America anyway. He made it to the Caribbean. He didn't make America. Ponce de Leon made it, you know. But most teachers are just robots. They're parrots. They memorize and they give it. They're good people. My whole family's teachers. I love them dearly. I go home to Hawaii, and this was years ago, my aunts would say, oh, they call me Bobby. Bobby, Bobby, have you found a job yet? And I have to go, no, I don't have a job. Oh, we're so sorry, too bad. Bad luck. I said, yeah, bad luck.
Wow.
It's just a mindset. That's
It's a
all it
mindset.
is. And it's a reality.
So now people are leaning in and saying, oh my goodness, I see what he's saying. What should my next moves be? I have some, you know, excess capital, you know, beyond what my means to live with are, and maybe I'm currently spending money on stupid things I don't need. What could my first step be toward trying to create some semblance of financial freedom for myself?
Well, as I said, education is more important than before, but you're going to choose your education.
And what educational? So
Well, it's I wouldn't go back to school personally.
Right.
And you know, people say do what you love. I say invest in what you love. So there's 4 basic asset classes you can invest in. Number 1 is a business, McDonald's. Okay. Number 2 is real estate. Number 3 are paper, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and savings. Number 4, commodities. I don't touch paper at all. I don't have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or savings because I can't control them. I can control my businesses, I control my real estate, and I control my gold and oil. That's what I do. I'm a control freak. But most people don't have the skill set or the training to control their assets. So when people ask me what should I do, I said, well, what do you love? Oh, I love real estate. So we'll take a real estate course. Oh, it takes money. I go, yeah, I don't have any money. I say, I also have no spiritual intelligence.
And I was just about to say, and that's where, you know, the sense, if you can say out loud, that takes money, I don't have money, it's almost like a negative affirmation.
Yep.
That spiritually now you're poor, not broke, but poor as a mindset.
You're spiritually poor.
Yeah.
Somebody took your heart and soul out of you, your willpower.
Yeah, because the entrepreneur says, hey, if I lost it all today, I wake up tomorrow morning with my mind
make it back.
and my energy, and I can make it back.
Right. And people, you know, I'm a Marine. I did horrible things in Vietnam as a pilot. And yet I wear this here. And this was a gift from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You know, so I'm not Buddhist or Christian. I just believe there's a spirit beyond all of this. And the same thing happened for me in Vietnam. Marine Corps is a very spiritual organization. You know, we gave our lives so others could live. I'm alive today because dead men kept fighting. We have to do horrible things, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's very spiritual. Most people don't have the spirit. They're emotional. Their emotions are so over, what if I fail? What if I don't have money? You know, then your spirit's been ripped out of you.
Yeah.
That's the sad part, you know.
The doubt almost is like a poison, right, to their soul. I mean, it's like you know, this doubt of that, you know, what if these fears.
Don't make mistakes. If you make mistakes, you're stupid. You got to have money. Look, the reason I love real estate is I don't use my money. I use my bank's money. It's called debt. All I have to show the banker is how I'm going to make money with the bank's money. That's all I have to do. And what I said is good debt and bad debt. Most people have bad debt. Bad debt is debt you pay for, like credit card debt, your mortgage, car payments. Good debt is somebody else pays for you. So I have 6,700 apartments. That's 6,700 people paying my mortgage for me. That's heaven.
Kind of interesting thing, yeah. That you
And I pay no taxes. So I took a real estate course when I came back from Vietnam. It cost me $385. That $385 has made me a multimillionaire over and over and over again. Whereas my friends who went and got their MBA, they're afraid of getting fired.
to try to figure out how to pay for their student loan.
It's just tragic.
And that's another thing too, because with college education, how expensive it's got, because that's another big debt on the books, right? Student loans.
That's not an accident either.
So, talk to me about that.
Well, what happened after the 2008 crash, there was, I forgot the name of FFL or something like this. It came in the 1950s, and it was to provide student loans for needy people. But what happened when the market crashed in 2007, 8, and 9, Obama had to cancel it because nobody wanted to lend money to students.
Right.
So Obama changed it, and it went to what we now know as the student loan debt. And the student loan debt that these kids, and so when you have student loan debt, colleges can charge more money. The trouble with the new loans that Obama put out, I'm not blaming him, but those loans are the worst type of debt you can get. They're non-forgivable. If you don't pay off that student loan debt, it's an albatross around your neck forever. So the people that get screwed by that student loan debt are people who either drop out of school and they have this debt, or they don't make enough money to amortize the debt. So right after the subprime crash in 2008, that's when these new student loans came in 2010. And that's why we have a problem today. But they don't tell the students that. And those schools are just sucking cash out of these poor students. It's horrible what they're doing to students. So we had subprime debt, and now we have subprime education, and you're still not learning anything about money. It's criminal what we're doing.
It really is, because they become enslaved, because of the debt. It's
Somebody's going to pay that, so I'm a banker, I lend you the money, thank you very much. You're going to pay me forever. Because you can't default on it. You cannot declare bankruptcy on student loan debt. Student loan debt is now the #1 asset of the U.S. government.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
We have ripped off the youth of our country going to school, and the school teachers are clueless.
So you get this seduction as far as saying, you need to go to school to be somebody. Then we'll lend you the money because we want you to go to school. And the schools then get greedy in the sense of saying, well, if they can borrow that much money, we can raise our tuition.
It's so bad.
Wow.
Do you remember there's a lot of schools today are diploma mills.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? You go there and then they make it really easy and then you get your diploma and you're out, but they got your money.
Wow.
And they're not competent students. I have a lot of employees, a lot of them not ready for anything. So it's kind of a mess we're in right now. So I sit there, and that's why my little Rich Dad company chugs along, and I love talking to guys like you and say what I say, and then the teachers send me hate mail.
You mentioned a book by M. Buckminster Fuller that you read that had a massive impact on you. Was there more about him that influenced your thinking?
Well, again, that seems like a parallel universe, because in 1967, I was at school in New York. I went to the Merchant Marine Academy. And there was a thing called Expo 67 in Montreal. So my classmate and I hitchhiked to Montreal to see the geodesic dome that Fuller built. And the geodesic dome by Fuller was the U.S. pavilion at the World's Fair. But I never met the guy there. And then years later, in the 81, he put on a seminar called The Future of Business. It was 1 week long. So I traveled from Hawaii to California to attend this 1 week seminar with Dr. Fuller, and he blew my brain away. It went, boom. It transformed me. I saw another world. So I think the spiritual side kicked in versus the mental side. And he had a saying, he says, you do not belong to you. You belong to the universe. Your true purpose may be forever obscure to you, but you may rest assured you're committing your life to the highest. If you are getting close to your life's purpose if you commit your life to the highest advantage of others. In other words, was I working for me or was I working for others? So that was 81.
Did you feel like you found a purpose at that point? Like you got
It was time to work for others.
Yeah.
At the time, I was in rock and roll, making a lot of money. You know, I was working for Duran Duran, the Police, Boy George, Van Halen, and
What'd you
all
do for
that.
them?
Sex, drugs. I don't do drugs, but a lot of sex and rock and roll. It was fun, and I was just making money.
Yeah.
And when Fuller says you do not belong to you, you belong to the universe. Your true purpose may be forever obscure to you, but you may rest assured you're if you commit your life to the highest advantage of others. And so in 81, I had to ask myself, what do I know? What can I do? As Fuller says, I'm just a little guy.
Yeah.
So what can we all do as little people? And we find our purpose when we want to help others. We don't find our purpose when we just want to make money. And that's what I was doing. So I said, what do I know? And that was 81. Then 83, his book came out, Grunge of Giants. And it was about how the central banks of the world rip us all off. I knew that game.
Wow.
I grew up in it. I know it. So then I said, I'm going to have to start teaching. So my wife and I in 83, God, sad. I sold everything. My wife and I went homeless just to teach. And we just kept teaching what we knew about money. And today we're multimillionaires, just kept going.
So it's interesting that the purpose drove you and
To teach.
and to teach. And
I hated school too.
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the irony in it. And but then the the outcome as far as long term, I guess it's kind of like we make plans and God laughs. It's like I want to accomplish this by this and this by this time. You just knew what you had to do based on something that moved you in your life. Was it?
I had no idea. Like it says, your true purpose may be forever obscure to you.
Yeah.
So what do I know? And what I knew was entrepreneurship, what my rich dad taught me. And so my wife Kim and I left Hawaii, moved to California, we were homeless, and we just kept teaching. And as Fuller says, always and only in the nick of time, life support showed up. And magic happened. Next person that Kim and I met was John Denver and Bucky Fuller's daughter. And when people say, how is it you spend time with Donald Trump? Why were you on Oprah? Why is all this magic happens to you? Because I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing what I know I think I can do. What can I do? I'm a little guy. And that's what is lost, I hate to say it, but so many times, like I've run into a lot of problems with some of my own business partners. All they see me for is a chance to make more money. And I said, you don't understand. If you focus on what you can do for others, God will take care of you. But you have to be smart too.
And you were with your wife, homeless. And money and relationships, there's a big relationship there as far
Right.
as what happens when there's financial strain in a marriage. Did it bring you closer together? What happened for you in that period of time?
Well, it wasn't easy, let me tell you. So we were homeless for a long period of time. But I already had some basic skills, and then so I was an entrepreneur, I made money teaching and things like this, and I just kept investing in real estate. And we got richer and richer and richer, and I kept teaching, I got richer, and that's what happened. So was it easy? No, it was hell. But it made us stronger, spiritually stronger. What they say, well, if it doesn't kill you, it doesn't kill you, you get stronger. Unfortunately, too many young people today, they're so afraid of being hurt, they get weaker.
Yeah.
So I'm not too optimistic. Not all of them, but a lot of them, So we got stronger as a couple and richer and happier and stuff like that. Good stuff. But it's not been easy.
No.
We had people steal from us, partners rip us off, lawsuits. But you just get stronger. Don't retaliate, just get stronger spiritually.
Don't retaliate, just get stronger.
Yeah, get smarter and stronger.
So then there is this very intimate connection between being an entrepreneur and your spirituality. Like,
Well, it depends on why you're an entrepreneur first. Most people only want the money. I'm going to make $1 million, I'm going to retire. That's their only purpose. But my purpose, I was in rock and roll. I was having a great time. My first date with my wife was to the Police.
wow.
I was backstage with the band and all that. It was really fun.
Yeah.
But when Fuller touched me, he says, he asked me one day, this is that week-long program, what's your life's purpose? And I said, to get rich. And he scolded me. He said, that's a waste of a good mind. I said, well, maybe for you, but I like my money, So I use my money. So I use what I learned about money to teach others, and that's how my life changed.
And this is the thing that I think is very important. Many times people think there's that material wealth and spiritual wealth are on opposite ends of a continuum. If you want to be more spiritually wealthy, you got to move away from material wealth. And if you want to be more material wealthy, you got to move away from spiritual wealth. But what you're proposing is that actually they can and should be one and the same.
Yeah, it depends on you. It's called standard of living. I like my standard of living. But I also write a lot about it. People say live below your means. That's not my philosophy. Like, I've had 4 Ferraris now. Now, do I need 4 Ferraris? No. But every time I want a Ferrari, it's inspiration. So my wife says, so I say to my wife, I want a new Ferrari. She says, you know the process? The process is I got to go find an asset that pays for the Ferrari. So my assets pay for my liabilities. And so every time I did that, I just gained more assets, and I sold the Ferrari. I still had the asset. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Is that, like, I wanted this Porsche one time, so I bought a mini storage, nothing down. The mini storage then bought the Porsche. I sold the Porsche. I still had the mini storage. That's mental,
Yeah.
It's just education.
Well, and it's, in a sense, you used this term earlier, it's a model. Like you talk about, it's a
Mindset,
business model. It's just another model of how you like to, utilize liabilities that bring you pleasure.
It's just a challenge, some people like to run triathlons. I don't. I'm a rugby player. I'm not a soccer player, I'm a rugby player. I like hitting people. Why don't I play soccer? Because I can't hit people. We're all different, that's all I'm saying,
Are you having fun?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
It's such a challenge every day. And the biggest challenge is spiritually, emotionally, because you go up and down, up and down, up and down. And it gets harder to stay spiritual when people are stealing from you, robbing you, suing you. A lot of them are friends, and it's.
How do you do it? So do you have any practices that help you stay spiritual in the face of all that?
Meditate. I seek quote unquote therapy, to keep my mind straight, because I'm a Marine, still in there.
Yeah.
So I have to keep that little Marine in check in here.
And the Marines ingrained that there's no such thing as an ex-Marine. You could be a former Marine, but you're still a Marine.
Yep, and it's one of the most spiritual organizations there is. Do you know what I mean? We're still so tightly bound. When I strapped in my helicopter, taking off, we're 5 Marines. We weren't lieutenant, corporal, and sergeant. We're 5 Marines, and we gave our lives so others could live. That is as spiritual as it gets. And I came back from Vietnam. I got spit on.
Yeah.
But it was still, Vietnam was one of the best experiences of my life. Still friends with those guys. It's a band of brothers.
Yeah.
That's spiritual. And I don't find that in business very often.
No, unfortunately.
Yep.
Well, you spent many, many decades, and your own personal story is extraordinary, and you want to see the world a certain way. Like you said, you certainly don't need to be sitting here talking to me right now, but you show up, and there's a reason for all that. Did you ever have sort of a summation on what the impact is you're hoping that your purpose to help other people is? What do you want to see as a legacy?
Well, as I said, as Fuller taught me, he says, you do not belong to you, you belong to the universe. And we're all sent here to do something. We all have a special, unique gift, something that happened to us along the way. And it's like from the Bible, not really religious either, but there was a story of the master who had 3 servants, and he gave each of the 3 servants different talents. Now the switch in there, talents is also money, but talents are also gifts. Mm-hmm. So we're all given certain talents, not the same talents. And there was that one servant who did nothing, he wasted his talents. Another servant buried his talents, and the other multiplied his talents. Mm. That was a way of saying, give your talents. But most people don't do it. They work for money.
Yeah.
They want money becomes their master. And it's really silly because you don't really need money to get rich. That's why I like real estate. It's my banker's money. And it's my tenant's money pay for my banker's money. And it's a nice world. And I get tax breaks. I'm in the business of McDonald's. Yeah. My business is real estate.
Well, kind of in summing up, one of the things that Buckminster Fuller wrote, which it spoke to me for some reason, I don't know if you have a comment or not, and I'll paraphrase, I don't know if I remember it exactly, but I said something to the effect of, when I'm working on solving a problem, I have no thought of beauty. Right. But once I solve it, if there's no beauty in it, I know I don't have the right solution.
That's it. That same statement has haunted me forever.
Why so?
I don't know why. I remember that because I studied with him 3 times. I had the luxury of studying with him 3 times. But he always talked about, he says, when you look at a flower and you see this beauty, you look at a tree, you see its beauty. And if it's not beautiful, it's not correct. And so that statement has haunted me.
Can I share with you what I think?
Sure.
When I look at the branches of philosophy in sequence, metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, politics, the last one is aesthetics,
yes,
which is beauty. And if they're teaching philosophy for many, many years and thinking about that sequence and how you use it as an applied philosophy, I had this inspirational thought. I don't think it was like not me thinking, but it just came to me. And it was that aesthetics, beauty, is really the first branch. That's where it all starts, and then it emerges from there. And then you look at a sunrise or a sunset, and no matter what, it's always beautiful. It always moves you.
Always perfect.
It's always perfect.
Yeah.
And I guess beauty and perfection, is maybe the universe's way to speak to us.
Right. And so like Eckhart Tolle, I read his work.
Yeah.
Talks about the first flower.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot because sometimes we don't take the time to look at the flowers and the trees and how perfect everything is. I'm more kind of running the numbers in my head and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the next evolution, is for us going to that beauty and seeing the beauty instead of just trying to make more and more money.
That's a great vision.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much. Really a great honor to be with you and to speak to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Robert Kiyosaki sort of seems like an enigma, doesn't he? As much as he talks about the desire that he had from his youth to be wealthy, how he created the concept and wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all the work that he's done in his life, it seems like, well, he's all about the money. But what I also found out is that there's a spiritual side to his vision for why wealth should be created and how people can release themselves from the bonds of poverty and the bonds of confinement when it comes to their financial life. So I hope you took a lot of great notes, and I hope you will watch this interview multiple times like I will. Well, I've got a real treat coming up for you here. The co-founder of The Motley Fool, David Gardner, who founded the company with his brother Tom, had created a brand that is known throughout the world in the arena of finances. These guys are smart, they're interesting, they're quoted all over the place, they've been out there for decades. And we went to their headquarters and had one great interaction with a lot of energy and amazing content with the co-founder, David Gardner. So enjoy this interview. David, thank you so much for inviting us into your home, or your home office, I should say, but it feels very friendly and homey here.
Looking
Kind
forward.
of you to say, Patrick. I thank you for suffering fools gladly. You have to really, we're like fools all the time. When actually anybody comes in from the outside world, hangs out with us, they're always raising the caliber here because you're surrounded by a lot of foolishness. So thank you for suffering fools gladly.
It doesn't feel like suffering, but nonetheless, I'm enjoying my experience already. And I just so much I want to talk to you about. I'm like, oh, let's wait till we turn on the cameras to have this conversation. Your story is a great entrepreneurial story. So could you kind of give us the background? Like, how did this whole thing emerge?
Sure. Well, we really just started The Motley Fool as a newsletter for our parents' friends. They were the only ones willing to pay us $48 a year for our advice, and I think they just kind of felt sorry for us. And I had quit my one job that I'd had up until The Motley Fool. I was writing for Louis Rukeyser, who was the longtime host of Wall Street Week on PBS. He had a newsletter, a financial newsletter, published here in Alexandria, Virginia, where we're talking today. And it wasn't a good job, as it turns out. I didn't really get to work with Lou, but what I was doing is I was writing, and I was able to write about things that I thought would be helpful for people in the financial world. So I would write about discount brokers, which 25 years ago was a newer thing, right? The idea that you could make some of the decisions yourself and actually just buy stocks directly for a much lower price through a discount broker. So I'd write that up, and then it would come back edited, and only half of it was what I'd written, and any color or personality was stripped out of it, and the first half was just a dry recitation of what I'd already said, and the second half were all the reasons you wouldn't want to use a discount broker. And from one month to the next, whether it was Quicken software or discount brokers, I kept like not being able to advocate for something and always without any color. And so I was out of that job. And so we had to start a newsletter for our parents' friends. But Patrick, from the get-go, we've always loved the stock market. We had a dad who taught us about the stock market. And we started to realize our parents' friends don't know that much about the stock market. And so we thought we had a voice. And by picking a foolish name, a business grew out of that.
How did the name get picked?
So I picked the name. It was from Act 2, Scene 7 of As You Like It. That's Shakespeare's probably greatest single scene about fools and foolishness. You can read all of Shakespeare, which I haven't quite, and I don't think you're going to find a better scene, Act 2, Scene 7 of As You Like It, but it's a nondescript quote, a fool, I see a fool of the forest, a motley fool. There are some other great lines in that scene, like invest me in my motley. There are a lot of good puns for us and what we're doing, but it kind of celebrates a foolish life, which is you're not really with Wall Street.
Right.
You're out, you're in the rural area, you're enjoying the forests, and you come across people who don't take themselves so seriously. And so I thought that's a great viewpoint to be coming from, because we are going to be talking about Wall Street and what we're doing, but we want to make it clear we're not that. We're more Main Street, not Wall Street. And so I love the character of the fool. We're going to screw up a lot. I've made a lot of bad stock picks in my life, so I can at least say ahead of time, hey, at least I told you I was a fool, right? I mean, like, we know, please, we take our work seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And so the name just, it fit.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we picked it. It's a crazy thing to take into the financial world.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it's really a crazy thing to bring into the financial world. The opposite of the newsletter you were originally writing for, right? Where everything had to be sterile and clean and serious.
That's right.
So the idea was breeding credibility, but you're basically saying, hey, we're being more transparent about the fact that this is not such a serious game as insofar as you're not Wall Street. You're literally on the other side of that wall, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
And you can have some fun with this.
Yes, and there's also a second aspect to it which helps, and that is that once you start to get into understanding what fools are about, you start to realize they were the only ones who could tell the king or queen the truth back in the Elizabethan courts and back through Renaissance history, right? The fool was there. He or she had license to be a truth teller at court when everybody else couldn't. And so, and how did he or she survive? Well, through humor.
Yeah.
And so there's one part of our brand and our name which is kind of like Dummy's Guide, like Dummy's Guide to Investing kind of thing. And that's what we try to do with the Motley Fool. We try to make it, we speak the lingua franca, use English, plain English, and talk to people just like ourselves and try to help them understand money. But the other part of it is that we really do try to tell the truth and make people smarter and use humor. And of course, when you're going to take the name The Motley Fool and enter the financial world where people say a fool and his money are soon parted, you better have something special, and you better feel really motivated to own and earn that name over time.
Well, and the brand purity is here after all these years, especially because I'm walking around the offices and as I'm looking how the office is set up, what the environment is around you, how the employees interact either with me or I see them interact with each other. That general vibe is all there. I mean, there's certainly a sense of purpose and intelligence, no doubt about it, but there's this kind of just
we're having fun vibe going on.
Yeah, and it's something that you can't just make happen overnight. I mean, you really have to, any culture is built, whether we're talking about civilizations of the last hundreds of years, or we're talking about a corporate culture, or at a university. A lot of us can look back to our colleges and remember something unique that felt cultural. But I think, especially here at The Fool, we've just kind of hired, who you hire, who you fire, who you promote, the cliche runs. That says a lot about your culture. That is your culture. Right. So we started by just hiring our friends from college. They're the only ones we could afford to hire initially. We couldn't take out wanted ads in the Washington Post, which is how you hired 25 years ago. These days, we wouldn't have been able to afford a big LinkedIn package. So we just started hiring our friends. And if you're going to do that, then you're going to create a culture probably by necessity, which is fun.
Right.
Because you're not going to say things like, you need to be here at 9 o'clock and you have to stay till 5, or we're going to count your vacation days, or all those things the other corporations do. When we started, we would never have done that to our college friends. And so we've just kind of kept that vibe going.
You guys have won some awards around being one of the best companies to work for, haven't you?
We have. And you know, I credit my brother, number one. He's our CEO. And Tom has always had, I mean, Tom was a great summer camp counselor. He's like one of those guys that if you went to a summer camp, we went to one in New England, you know, you'd love to have him be your counselor. And that love of kind of a collegial atmosphere, whether it's summer camp or college, that feel, he's always done just a great job kind of projecting that. And then I guess just, you know, from our name that we chose intentionally, but then right down through to the business of what we do every day, Patrick, which is that we try to help the world invest better. You know, it's a world that doesn't understand investing. The word invest is largely misunderstood. We can talk about that maybe a little bit later, but you know, so much of our work is almost try to peel back the layers of complexity that people have added to money that have caused them not to see the truth or what they should be doing. And so a lot of our job is just to kind of get people right back in touch with, hey, you're a human, I'm a human, we can figure this thing out, especially using the internet together, we can become better at money together. So I think I'm starting to rant or left your actual question, but it's because I love talking about our purpose and what we do.
You know, you didn't leave it at all, and it actually leads to another question, which is, so you started with a newsletter, and you know, and I think you said what the intent is having your parents' friends kind of understand this a little bit better, right?
Yeah,
and have some fun around it.
That's true.
What were the other milestones in the journey that started to build out this very large organization?
Yeah. So I think the first one I'll identify is just that we did an April Fool's joke because we were the Motley Fool, and we did it online, which back then was like a new thing. These days, every corporation has its April Fool's joke annually every year. It's like not even a fun day anymore to me because everybody's making the. But back then, nobody was doing it, and the internet, well, really, the internet didn't exist. The World Wide Web, that phrase wasn't being used back in AOL in 1993-4. And so we played a joke hyping a penny stock that didn't exist. You started to see people are pumping and dumping, and people are using this medium to cause others to buy bad penny stocks. And they're literally selling their own shares to the people they're getting to buy the stock and then leaving them to dry with these penny stocks. So we basically parodied that and got the attention of the Wall Street Journal and Forbes magazine, each of which wrote a little article on what the Motley Fool had done on Prodigy, which I know we're about the same age. So you remember back in the day, Prodigy? Not a big brand anymore. AOL's not as big a brand anymore, but back in those days, they were big dogs. And so that was number one, is that we got the attention of the press for what we were doing online, having fun with the medium, and trying to make a really important financial point, which is don't buy penny stocks and don't get involved in others pump and dump schemes. AOL said, hey, you guys should open up the Motley Fool on AOL. That's number two. That was August 4th of 1994. So it's 24 years later now, but we started the newsletter 1 year before, so the Motley Fool is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. But that was number two, debuting online, keyword fool. Getting up on the AOL main screen back in the day, that was really big. We had lots of people clicking through, what is this jester, who are these people? And so we had a lot of attention. And then we had a great first month or so, and the New Yorker wrote us up in the Talk of the Town section and said there's this cool new thing on AOL called the Motley Fool. And that triggered calls from Simon & Schuster, from literary agents, hey, there's a book here. And all of a sudden, we started realizing, two bros, we had money to hire a third person and a fourth, and we could become a company. So we very much did not start as a company. We were not entrepreneurs. We didn't think of it that way. But all of a sudden, we realized this is going to become something.
So now this starts to build and builds momentum. And at that point, it was information-based for the most part, right? Just giving out advice as you saw it. There was no product or service that you were selling other than that.
In retrospect, I wish we'd had a product. You're right. We wrote our first book, Simon & Schuster, and we basically just said, hey, go to keyword fool on AOL. Now, It was kind of a product in that back in those days we paid, you remember this? Connect fees, remember?
Oh, yes.
$4 an hour?
Yes.
So if you came to the Motley Fool keyword fool on AOL, we'd get 10% of that. So if you're paying AOL $3.50 an hour, we were getting 35 cents if you spent an hour. So our first book, which tried to help America think smarter about the stock market, ultimately didn't have any product or anything that we could really sell other than, hey, go to our site. All of a sudden, 2 years later, AOL goes free.
Right.
Going to our site isn't even, now we're just trying to get money on ads, which
Right.
is how the Motley Fool transitioned its business during a golden age for AOL where all of a sudden it got cheap to get online, finally. But we ended up in really bad trouble after 2001, which was such a horrible year for our nation, for the stock market, which closed a few days, some buildings fell. It was just a horrible year. So we had a lot of layoffs and we had to shift our business model. And we went from an free ad-supported site to a subscription-based business, which is how we'd started 7 years before for our parents' friends. And now 25 years later, that's how we butter our bread. We're a subscription business.
I'm reading from your energy and enthusiasm. This is still as fun today or more fun than it ever has been after 25 years?
It is more fun today than it ever has been. I mean, there are pleasures that I'll never get back. For example, the very first time the Wall Street Journal ever printed the phrase "the Motley Fool" seriously, I mean, I was on the floor. I was to think that we actually, it was a newsletter for our parents' friends, people, and we called it the Motley Fool. And look, they've just legitimized this. It's the Motley Fool. It says that, so I can never get that back, right? Other experiences like that. Having supper with Barbara Streisand as she's talking about how she loves the Motley Fool and is day trading eBay, which is an earlier stage of Barbara Streisand existing. Like just experiences that I could never have imagined just a year or two before that, when I was just operating from a small apartment in Charlottesville, Virginia, as my wife went through grad school. I couldn't believe what had happened. So I love all that. We were on the cover of Fortune magazine. When I go back to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is where I graduated university, and I say, if I could see a video of myself right now with a fool cap on giving a talk to the business school when I was an undergrad studying English, I'd be like, what has happened to me that I'm talking about stocks with a jester cap on from the business school? So I can never get those moments back. But the truth is that we're operating at just a larger base today and reaching more people, and now globally, we just have more capabilities, more possibilities, and that's what's most fun. So I can say, I sure hope Tom's having more fun than he ever has before. I am. I think many of our employees are. I'll never speak for anybody but myself, but I'm having a lot of fun, and I think our members are too. And when the stock market's as strong as it has been, you can imagine that that's going to be fun too for our business, always will be.
Sure. I noticed many of the conference rooms around here have people's names on it. Right now we're in the Mackey room for John Mackey, who, the Whole Foods CEO and co-founder. I see Bezos across the way here. What's the theme here?
So we definitely love entrepreneurs. There are no great stocks. There are no great stock picks without great entrepreneurs.
Right.
So while we're very stock market focused, the truth is we're just very business focused. So I want to make it really clear that we deeply admire and are grateful for people like Jeff Bezos. I'm glad that I got to live on the earth at the time that Jeff did. Not only did we pick the stock at $3 a share, and now it's like 2,000, so it's up 600 times in value, so it's been our best stock pick ever. So not only do we appreciate that, but apart from any bragging, what an incredible company Amazon is. I mean, how much value is that just for me as a consumer, maybe you too.
Yes.
And then right next to it, Rowling, J.K. Rowling. What an incredible entrepreneur. I mean, the author of the Harry Potter
You
books.
just made my daughter very happy, incidentally.
And you know what I love about both Rowling and Bezos? Think about the smiles they brought to how many lives in totally different ways, and yet both of them very business-minded. J.K. Rowling, I think the highest net worth, except for maybe Queen Elizabeth, female in the UK today, and think about where she came from. In fact, both Bezos and Rowling didn't come from wealth.
Right.
And so that's also a great story, and always been true, will be true every generation about business, is that entrepreneurs rise from anywhere.
Yep, and it's a story of wealth creation, right? And that's what I think people have to understand, is that wealth is created through efforts, through purpose, through these types of productive activities. It's value creation.
That's exactly right. In fact, the way I've heard it before, and Patrick, I bet you know this because it sounds very familiar, is poverty doesn't need to be explained.
Right.
Because poverty is how everything started.
Right.
We arose from the swamps. We didn't even have clothes. Poverty doesn't need to be explained. Maybe in some contexts it does.
Yeah.
Really what needs to be explained is our wealth, our prosperity. Where did that come from? And how do we get more of that? How do we generate more of that for everybody globally?
So aside from these conference rooms, I'm seeing this open area work environment here that's fascinating to say the least. Looks like fun. I want to go out and play.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Patrick, because in some ways, both my brother, our CEO, Tom Gardner, and his brother, Dave Gardner, have sometimes wondered, is this the most productivity that we could have, this kind of approach? Because it is fun. It's very social. There's a lot of glass, a lot of transparency, which is true of the Motley Fool's advice and our brand and how we've always built our company. But it also means sometimes it's almost too fun. So some of our employees have to sequester themselves sometimes in quiet spaces or dark places to actually get work done here at Fool HQ. I don't come in every day of the week now these days at the Fool, but when I do, I'm here for meetings. I stack my meetings wall to wall across the day. If I actually needed to be picking my stocks or do other things, I might need to find some quiet spaces outside of Fool HQ. Anyway, it is a lot of fun and we love it.
Now, you earlier alluded to saying people don't understand what the term invest means. So can we circle back to that and tell me what you mean by that statement?
Yeah, so the word invest comes from the Latin investere. And I never did take Latin, but I do love etymologies. I do love seeing where our language comes from. So the word investere in Latin means to put on the clothes of, to wear the clothes of. So a word like priestly vestments, that's from the same root investere. So to wear the clothes of. And I love that visual for trying to teach others truly how to invest. Because I think it's a lot closer. We're about to hit the NFL football time of year. So if you're a fan, you go to the games, people are wearing the jerseys of the teams, or hockey. Happens especially in hockey and football. It seems not as much baseball. Baseball. Anyway, people are wearing the clothes. And that's the way we think you should be with your money when you're investing in great companies. You should love what the company does. You should see something of yourself in it. You should be patient. When your team has a losing streak, you shouldn't sell. And you shouldn't be right away thinking, now that I've bought this stock, when do I sell? You should basically be making a lifetime of it as a fan of capitalism and of the companies that you're invested in. So that's where the word invest comes from, to put on the clothes of. And we live in a world where the average mutual fund today turns over 70 to 100% of itself over the course of a year. So the average managed mutual fund today, whatever the managers start with January 1st, those stocks are typically gone by the end of that same year. And while that might work for the institutions, although I don't think it's a great approach for institutions, it certainly shouldn't be done by individuals. We have an incredible advantage by showing patience and by putting on those clothes.
Well, it's interesting because the context of that word is used that way. Like, I'm invested in my team, the New York Giants.
You're right.
And that's why you would be, because you're emotionally invested, and why? Because there's something about that reflects, you said this, so I'm just reiterating, but there's something about that you see there that reflects something in yourself that you connect to, that you want to be bonded with. So does that translate into more, like you're saying, like a long-term kind of view when you're investing or buying stock, that you don't want to just turn things over, but what you advise people as a part of your investment philosophy is to buy and hold or be invested in it for the long haul? How do you see that?
That's right. I see that as the greatest advantage that you and I have as individuals, and it's more powerful than the institutions. Institutions really have to trade in and out, in part because they have a lot of people who are putting money in the fund and then need to pull it out to buy a house or whatever. So institutions themselves are jumping in and out, partly driven by individuals. But you and I, with our own portfolios, our 401k plans, there's no compulsion to do that. We should be investing toward retirement or toward goals that should be long-term goals. And so the greatest friend to us is the power of compounded returns. But I mean, it's just such an incredibly, the math is so beautiful. The stock market on average returns about 10% annualized. I don't know of anything else that does that. I mean, that is literally every year it goes up another 10%. Now, you and I both know it's not literally every year. Some years it drops 28%, and other years it goes up 42%. But when you take it on average over decades or now century plus, it's 10% a year. And so if you just let that 10% keep compounding, you know that you start to double your money every 7 years. And that's just if you're doing what the stock market on average does. Now, every day at the Motley Fool, I and my fellow fools work to beat the market averages. I'm happy to say we have a record of doing that. So we can actually double our money faster than that. But there's nothing like that. So the earlier anybody watching this show finds out about that in life, as early as possible, they get on that train, the compounding train, that 10% annualized, wind at your back, and it's so powerful 10, 20, 50 years later. That's why it's a delight whenever I can talk to a teenager. And when I'm talking to a 52-year-old like myself, I still feel great. Like, I hope we got another 50 years, so let's stay invested. But the earlier we can get them through all the work that we're doing together, the better for them.
So it's obvious for the younger person saying, hey, you know, there's a lot of road in front of you and it'd be good to take advantage of this now. But let's say you're the 50-something, as you characterize it, professional. You've made a good living, you know, over time, but you've never understood investment, never understood, you know, you only understood how to create, you know, revenue based on the business that you're in. What advice would you have for them? Say, I'm in my 50s now. How do I jump into this?
Yeah, so number one, a lot of what you learn from your professional life can and should be applied to your investing life. And one of the sad things for me, since there's such a lack of financial literacy and understanding in our country, and our country is well ahead of much of the rest of the world.
Sure.
So there's just mass ignorance about how to make your money work for you. But once you realize that the lessons you learn as a professional can be applied, like what companies do you admire? Great, let's buy those companies in our portfolios. Let's be numerical. We have to be that in our business. Well, did you know that whole 10% thing I was talking about earlier? Let's do some math on a spreadsheet together and put together a plan. And so number one, you have more than you think, which was the title of our second book. All those lessons and viewpoints you have, both as a professional and a consumer.
Right.
And the people around you. Some of my best stocks come from my kids, my wife, my friends, my fellow fools. I don't have to be a genius and find every good company out there. I can definitely listen and socialize it, right? So number one. Then number two, we're all living longer these days. I mean, a lot of people have the biggest fear, not that they didn't save, but that they're going to live so long that they're going to outlive and outstrip their savings because of the increase in longevity. Worldwide, longevity for humans is up 1/3 since 1950. So basically the last 80 years, we're all living 1/3 longer than they did just a generation or two ago. So as a fellow early 50s person, if I'm speaking to somebody like me, because I'm 52, I'd say you should be thinking about 40 years ahead. Does that sound like a long amount of time? To me, that sounds like the long term. That sounds like a good, healthy amount of time. So let's get invested now. Let's take our savings right away and get it in the market. And we can talk some about the market and its wiles. But let's not worry about what the market's going to do tomorrow. Let's not worry about people telling you it's going to crash next year, those kinds of things. Think about being an investor for the rest of your life, 40 plus years, and let's start doing it the real way, the way that works.
So let's talk about the market. So what comments did you have in your mind when you were saying, yeah, we can talk about the market? What do you want to say about it?
So a couple of rules of thumb everybody should know. We've already covered one. Stock market rises on average 10% a year. It's very hard to find anything that's going to do that. Real estate, depending on where we are, might do something like that, but it's illiquid. You can't turn around and sell that property, and sometimes you have to maintain or be a landlord. That's a lot of effort relative to just a stock portfolio. Bonds, 5, 6, 7% historically. CDs, 1, 2% historically. I mean, so the state lottery minus 50%. I have to put a quick slam into the state lottery because it's really bad advice that we're giving our fellow Americans every day. Things like you got to play to win.
Right.
You could be next. It's really sad. Every dollar that anybody spends on a lottery ticket, 50 cents is skimmed right off the top as a tax, and you're left with an incredibly, it's a bear market every day in state lottery. So people lack an understanding of these numbers, and so I just like to make sure we understand kind of the range of possibilities. There's minus 50% daily, right up to how about 10% annually over time. So another rule of thumb, 2 years out of every 3, the stock market rises. 1 year out of every 3, the stock market drops. So if you're going to hold, as I do for decades, that means 1/3 of the time you're going to feel bad. You're going to look silly. As a professional picking stocks that people follow my advice, I look like an idiot all the time. A lot of the stocks that I picked haven't worked out. And so you just have to be at peace with that and recognize you need to lose to win.
So let's say I'm a subscriber of yours, and maybe a new subscriber. What's the best way for me to engage so that I can maximize the benefit I get from your service?
So Motley Fool Stock Advisor is our starter service. That's the vast majority of our members are subscribed to Motley Fool Stock Advisor. And what we're doing there is my brother and I are each picking a stock a month. And so we're thinking about the next 3+ years. So if you were to join this month, you're going to see my latest, freshest, newest favorite pick, my brother Tom's. You'll be able to look up and down and see all stocks we've ever picked since we launched in March of 2002. So you can see our records. You're going to see we've beaten the market very substantially in a world where it's often assumed or taught that you can't beat the stock market. It would just be luck.
Right.
For some reason, I've happened into the one professional discipline where everybody thinks that it would just be luck to be better than average. People don't think that about NBA players. They don't think that about doctors or lawyers. But for some reason, picking stocks, well, that would just be you're coming against monkeys and you have no shot throwing darts against the wall. Right? So I don't believe that. I've never believed that. I think that you are rewarded. You definitely can beat the market. We've demonstrated that. So you'd see that in Stock Advisor. And then we would want you to get your feet wet. We'd suggest that you buy one or both of those stocks, and then next month when we come out with our next picks, we'd suggest you do it again and make a regular habit of saving every 2 weeks, investing every month. And I'd hope that you could go from 0 stocks, if that's where you were, to 15 stocks as quickly as possible so that you have a nice base, a portfolio. And from there, you could keep adding or just add to those 15. You could add more. There's a lot of ways to play it. But what you're doing there are 2 things. You are investing regularly.
Right.
You're not sweating the market or worried or waiting because you hear it might crash. Every single month, you're dollar cost averaging into our picks. And number 2, you're going to start experiencing the positive vibe of success. Because, again, 10% on average is the gain made by this thing year in and year out. In 2 years, every 3, you're winning, and it beats everything else, especially over time. So I think you're going to start feeling those positive vibes, and you're going to want to save more at that point. You're going to start saying, honey, let's save even more because look. And in fact, you'll be rewarded for that over time.
So structurally, it'd be a matter of saying, okay, so I would follow, subscribe. I'd set up some kind of a trading account.
Yes, yeah. You would definitely want to open up a brokerage account, which these days is very easy to do online.
Sure.
There are things like Schwab and E-Trade, and you see them all advertising, and they're all pretty good.
Yep.
But yes, you definitely need to have an account, and that's not much more than when you opened up a bank account as a high school kid. You probably wrote a check to deposit that first amount of money. You do the same thing with a brokerage account. Of course, a lot of people have 401k accounts and retirement plans, IRAs, where they can invest sometimes stocks directly there.
Sure.
So a lot of people use that.
And I think a part of this, which is maybe the psychological part, this human psychodynamic is saying, well, once you have a structure, then you start to have the discipline to fund, as a process, saying, hey, we have a certain amount of income coming in, and we're going to allocate. And
that's right.
And doing it with you, because just hearing you talk about it being in the in the glow of what this environment is here, it seems like fun as compared to drudgery. And I think that's a part. A lot of people say this is too abstract and mystical for me, and it seems very boring. I don't want to. I don't want to get involved. But somehow you guys keep people engaged through humor and through fun.
Well, I appreciate that, and because I don't want us to take too much credit for it. I think it is among the most fun and positive things that you can do, whether or not the Motley Fool ever told you to do that or not.
Right.
The act of becoming a part owner of companies that you admire, companies whose products you love. A lot of people love Apple. It's been a pretty good stock over the last 10 or 20 years, right?
Yeah.
It's now the largest public company in the world.
The first $1 trillion company.
That's right,
Value,
and it's been tremendously successful. And a lot of people, the reason it's so successful is because they love the product.
Right.
And so for anybody who ever bought an iPhone, I'd say, did you think about also spending that same $200 saving additionally buying some Apple stock? Because that iPhone's going to depreciate and you're going to have to buy the next one. But at Apple stock, that appreciates. So to go away from the stock market briefly, a lot of people buy that first car and they don't realize that's going to be a depreciating asset. It's maybe not the best way to spend your money. If instead you'd spent that money with a $30,000 stock purchase and you play that forward 10, 15 years, you start to see the power of not buying cars new that often. So I think it should be fun. I think it is fun. I love the companies I'm invested in. I'm fascinated by Intuitive Surgical, which is bringing surgical robots and improving outcomes for people, or Netflix, which is the way I've spent a lot of hours. Right, these are companies I love. So I think this should be by nature fun. And maybe a lot of people like fantasy football. I like fantasy stock ball. I think that we should have the same fun that people have with watching sports with our stocks.
And it's interesting. It's so often over the years, my mother had when we were having to have traffic directed to go into a Whole Foods, when it first came out in our town, she's like, you ought to go buy that stock, Home Depot, you ought to buy it, because she just sees crowds. And back then, of course, I was smarter. I went and I looked and I said, well, it looks like all the growth is priced in already, blah, blah, blah. That's when Whole Foods was up like 20 or something, And so my mom actually was a much better stock picker than I was.
I appreciate that.
But I think that's the point, is what you're saying is that if you're a consumer of something that you have a passion about, that's probably a good stock to be in, given
given some other considerations, but that's one way to look at it.
Absolutely. In fact, that's the truest way of looking at it. The reason that the stock market exists is so that people like you and me can take part ownership in the companies themselves. They take in our money and it allows them to grow their business,
Right.
but we become part owners. And so it's amazing that every day you have access to thousands of companies that you and I could right now become a part owner of. And then the only question is, A, do I have the money? Am I saving? Am I saving 10% of my salary every 2 weeks? I hope so.
Yep.
And then B, okay, which one out of this kid in a candy store, farmer's market here, which booth do we want to go up to? We're not going to be buying fruits and vegetables. We're actually going to be buying Hasbro
Right.
or Disney
Right.
or Under Armour. And why would we buy this one over that one? And which is going to be the best one? And if you're a gamer and I'm a gamer, like I'm not even an investor. I'm really just a gamer who happens to invest. If you're a gamer, this is like the greatest game of all, is asking, what's going to beat the market? What's going to be the best? What's going to be the next Apple? That's one thing we do every day at the Motley Fool. And over the last 25 years, we've gotten it right some of the times, and it's tremendously fun when you do.
So what are conversations like around here? Because I'm sure you have a team of people that are looking at different things, and you probably get together and say, okay, let's have a conversation. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And people kind of share their passions or their ideas as far as what stocks. What's your process like?
Yeah, well, and that is true of what happens here at Fool HQ, especially among our analysts. That's their professional calling.
Right.
But I mean, with member events and people on our website and the community that we've grown at Fool.com over the years, I mean, we basically love those conversations. It's kind of like that if you do a fantasy football draft,
Yep.
except we're talking about stocks. And the good news is, while it's fun to win your draft NFL league,
Right.
when you win with your stock portfolio, that really causes your life to change in wonderful ways. Like you can retire early off this, harder to do off that, right? So we recognize the importance of these decisions, and we try to make sure that everybody, whether they just started as a receptionist here at the Motley Fool, and you'd think, well, that person maybe wouldn't even care about stocks. No,
Right.
Everybody, we want to make sure that they love what we do. Now, not everybody's going to care about the stock market as much as my brother and I do,
Right.
but that feeling of, well, the purpose of our company is to help the world invest better, so darn it, we should start with our employees. In fact, we give each of our employees a stipend to begin investing, regardless of what their role is. But yeah, I think that shows like Silicon Valley, I mean, just think about how business is more and more popular. The Office, right? Like these are entering our narrative, our stories as storytellers. Like these things that were kludgy stock market conversations 30 years ago. So I think being interested in where the world's headed, and it's being shaped by for-profit corporations globally, in my opinion, most strongly of all, you're talking about the future as much as you are some wonky thing like the stock market.
Right, and it seems to me like you're giving people a new lens to look through when they're viewing the market, like just to have a different experience in what they're seeing. What do you see moving forward as far as Motley Fool and what impact it might have on the world, let's say in the next 10 years? What do you want to see happen?
Well, I would love for everybody to be invested, and for that to happen, everybody needs to save. Mm-hmm. And we've tried various things over the course of time at Fool.com. Our book, You Have More Than You Think. We've written to the people who don't have money yet and who can invest in the stock market, shouldn't. They have credit card debt, got to get rid of that. A lot of student debt these days. We've tried to speak to these and help people there. But the future that I hope that we're helping create is one where everyone's a saver, because everyone truly can be. And then they're using that savings in a way that they enjoy. Not everybody is going to want to invest directly in stocks. We know that. So they can go for index funds or have friends do it for them. But in particular, we're creating a world where the people who do want to make a choice, it doesn't have to be all of your money, but buy your first stock. They start to see the fun and participate in capitalism. Capitalism is the most participative system that I can think of. Everybody is a buyer or seller. Everybody's trading. We're buying from each other. You're really good at doing TV shows. I hope I'm not horrible at giving stock picks. Here we are trading, right? We're each. So it's such an awesome system. Everybody should be on board. And conscious capitalism, which is something we could or could not talk to. I know, Patrick, it's part of your background. John Mackey is a founder of the movement. But I mean, so I think everybody's doing that, and that's what the Motley Fool's working toward. And when more people are participating in capitalism, then which stock you pick starts to matter even more. Like, what do we want to fund? What's going to win? What's going to lose? Let's make sure that we're betting on the right horses and that we feel in touch with the purposes of the companies. One thing we never do at the Motley Fool is we don't advise people buy companies that they don't respect the products or services. We don't think, hey, it'll be a good stock, but they sell tobacco, so just buy it, but it may not be good for the world. No, we're like, your money should be exactly aligned with what you think about the world. In fact, if you really care about socially responsible investing, one of the most responsible things you could do is become a direct investor in stocks and not just give it to some fund manager who's making that decision for you. So I see a world that's more and more in touch with a proliferation of innovations that are for-profit companies and more people interested and excited. Maybe slightly less fantasy football. I feel like I'm pounding fantasy football for no good reason in this interview. Maybe it's just that time of year. But I think too many people care about sports and not nearly enough people care about their financial freedom. And I know the value of this. And I love this too. But it's like that, and that's the society the Motley Fool, I hope, is helping to create.
With a group of my entrepreneurial friends, we are putting together a book called The Moral Virtue of Capitalism, where each of us are writing that, because the practical aspects of capitalism are a foregone conclusion. But you're actually starting to speak to the moral virtue of capitalism. So can we dig a little deeper there as far as how you see that this system is really the right system and how human beings should live together and trade together?
Well, it's the story of humanity. In fact, a wonderful book called The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, he talks about how what makes us unique as a species is we trade. We trade goods, we trade ideas, we trade experiences, we trade across cultures. From the dawn of humanity, we started to rise out of the swamps when many other species weren't, because we traded. And more than anything, we traded ideas. Because I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said, an idea is like a lamp that's lit, and I can light yours from mine, and I lost nothing, and you gained something. And that's the story of capitalism. When we work together, when you do something you're really good at, and I do something I'm really good at, and we buy from each other, we both got a better quality product across both of those experiences, and the world starts to specialize, and that's obviously what's happened. America probably practices the highest, most advanced form of capitalism at scale today, and yet we still see so many ways that it could be improved and will be. But it's still such a great system, because at the heart of it, you have people doing what they love and do best, I hope. I hope we're all doing jobs that we love. And if you're not, and you're watching Patrick and me right now, change your job. I had one job before when I started the Fool, and I hated it, and I'm so glad that I walked away from it at the time. But so we should be doing something we're good at that we love, and then we should be buying that thing from other people. And then we should start corporations together and be invested together, and then watch our stocks triple or go up 300 times in value like Amazon.com. I'll close my answer by saying that, how did our dad get us started with the stock market? He said, hey kids, look, we're in Safeway here in Washington, D.C. at the grocery store. Chocolate pudding. We own some of the company that makes that chocolate pudding. We own some stock in them, just a little bit. Let's go get more chocolate pudding. So it made him an awesome dad, because we were like 7 years old being told that we should be getting more chocolate pudding. But that's capitalism. Right. And it's a beautiful thing, well practiced, which it is increasingly today.
Well, and that's a perfect metaphor, I think, for what you've done, is that the Motley Fool has brought to the world the idea of getting more chocolate pudding, making it fun. So somehow that little lesson from your father all those years ago has manifested, touching millions of lives around the world in a very positive way. And I think what's extraordinary is that you've injected vitalism, life, into something that was seen as a very kind of dry, marble facade, staunch, boring thing. You've turned into something fun. You turned into something that not only is employing people that are having a lot of fun with it, but it's touching millions of lives out there. So I know you're extraordinarily busy, and the fact that you take the time to sit and talk to us is just a testament to how much you really care about getting this word out there and getting your message out there. So thank you so much for spending this time, and I wish the Motley Fool many, many more decades of the foolish behavior and fun that you're having.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you for featuring us on your show in this series. And I think it's great what you guys are doing, which is that you're trying to help all of us understand money better. It is such an important subject. It's often not taught in schools, even at the university or graduate level, and yet every day we're losing new adults upon the world who are going to have to make decisions the rest of their lives about money, and it's going to matter a lot. So let's keep spreading that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to be with you. I really hope you enjoyed episode 1. And one thing I want to encourage you to do right now is to share this with anybody else in your life that you think would benefit. For sure, children should be watching this information. They're not learning this in school. Maybe your spouse, maybe your coworkers, maybe brothers, sisters, etc. But share this. This topic of money is a critical topic for all people. And as you can see after episode 1, there's a lot here to learn, and we have so much more coming. So please share this, and I look forward to seeing you in episode 2.
Value creation is the engine for exchange. Exchange creates wealth. The more we exchange with one another, the more wealth that's created. And a dollar doesn't end because I spend it. You take that dollar. Then you get to use that dollar again, and then someone else uses the dollar. The more times that exchanges hands, the more what we call in economy, velocity happens. Hard work with the wrong philosophy still equals bankruptcy.
The rapaciousness and mercenary nature of Wall Street and the things that they do make them impossible. We offer that expertise that does help level the playing field. At the end of the year, I calculate our average gain, and I mean, we just do really well.